Namaste everyone. Thanks for joining this course on performing puja at home. A series of 4 classes we plan to conduct every weekend on Sundays at 4 to 5:30 p.m. This is going to be the first class, and we will start this class with a small prayer followed by the course. Okay, so let's start. Okay, before we start, I think I wish you all a very happy Independence Day. Today is a very important. Today is very important for 2 reasons. One is Independence Day, definitely. Second is it's our Pujya Swami's birthday as well. So may I invite Swamini to just say a few words before I start this session's Mataji.
Shall we do the prayers first, or other way around?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah. Okay. So what is the process, Mataji? I mean, I say and people repeat, or you have to join together?
No, we can't join together in Zoom. Okay. So I think I would suggest you say it, and Aditya can repeat after you.
Okay. Yeah. Whoever can repeat, they can repeat. Yeah. Okay. Shuklam Bharadharam Vishnum.
Shuklam Bharadharam Vishnum.
Shashi Varnam Chaturbhujam.
Shashi Varnam Chaturbhujam.
Prasanna Vadanam Dhyayet.
Prasanna Vadanam Dhyayet.
Sarva Vignopashantaye.
Sarva Vignopashantaye.
Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu.
Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu.
Gurur Devo Maheshwarah.
Gurur Devo Maheshwarah.
Guru Sakshat Param Brahma.
Guru Sakshat Param Brahma.
Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Asato Ma Sadgamaya.
Asato Ma Satgamaya.
Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya.
Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya.
Mrityorma Amrutam Gamaya.
Mrityorva Amritam Gamaya.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Saraswati Namastubhyam.
Saraswati Namastubhyam.
Varade Kamarupini.
Varade Kamarupini.
Vidyarambam Karishyami.
Vidyarambam Karishyami.
Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada.
Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada.
Mataji, if you done with the prayer?
Yes. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. So once again, yes, happy 75th Independence Day to all of us. And it is also the 91st Jayanti day of our beloved Guru, Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati. And we had live streaming of pujas, elaborate pujas done in our Gurukulams, Rishikesh, Anekati, Coimbatore, and Sailorsburg also. And I'm very happy that on this occasion, we are going to start this much, I would say much needed course on puja. And I'm happy that Satyanarayanji will be guiding it and leading all of you in these steps of the puja. So I want to begin with one Subhashitam. This is a very popular Subhashitam. And Swamiji would always quote it in the Gurukulams. It goes like this. Udyamam sahasam dhairyam buddhihi shaktihi parakramaha. Udyamam sahasam dhairyam buddhihi, shaktihi, parakramah. Shadete yatra vartante, shadete yatra vartante, tatra daiva sahayakrit. Tatra daiva sahayakrit. Simple Subhashitam with some Sanskritam, we can even follow the meaning. Yeah. So what this means is Udyamam is effort. Sahasam is enterprise. Dhairyam is courage. Buddhihi, intelligence. Shaktihi is all this manpower like Zoom technology, skills, resources. And Parakramaha is perseverance. Despite obstacles, the sustained enthusiasm. So these are the 6 factors we know that when we have, any undertaking is more or less going to be successful. But what really happens or can happen, there is an unknown element, an uncertain element that can make difference between success and failure. This I think we've all experienced it. So even when all these are there, Udyamam, Sahasam, Dhairyam, Shaktihi, Buddhihi, Parakramaha, success is not guaranteed. So the result can be what I expect, can be more than I expect, less than I expect, or even opposite. So that is why, and some people, we all call it luck, bad luck or good luck. We just term it as that. But in our Vedic culture, there is a way to deal with that unknown, uncertain element. So by effort, we can invoke that 7th factor, which is Daivam, which is the grace of Bhagavan. And that, when that is invoked, that blesses us with success. And even if obstacles continue to be there, we will have the courage to deal with the obstacles intelligently. And one such way to invoke the grace of Bhagavan is prayer. You will learn a lot more about prayer in the course. But one of Pujya Swamiji's favorite quotations is, prayerful living is intelligent living. Prayerful living is intelligent living. So that Daivam or the grace can be invoked by a simple prayer, can be offering a flower, lighting a lamp, or an elaborate ritual that we can do. And in our culture, it is very normal, as breathing to pray. Every dancer, she prays before dancing on the stage. And a singer, she or he will pray by, the first song will be that of Ganesha. The auto driver or the bus driver, they will wave some incense before the altar near the engine. The farmer, before digging the fields, he will do a Bhumi Puja. So why does one do that? Why does one pray? To take care of that unknown, uncertain element that can block my progress. And so the prayer is meant to invoke the 7th factor, the Daivam, and which will bless me with whatever I need. Here nearby in Hyderabad, we have a Bhagavan called Visa Bhagavan. So there is a Balaji temple here, and people go there actually to get success in their visa applications, which is a very practical way to do. So whatever the need is, if it is health or success, interview, there is a very famous Hanuman temple nearby, and just before exams, it will be flooded with students. They will bring their hall ticket and offer it to Hanumanji and do a puja. So this is the greatness of prayer, which is very well recognized in our culture. And so puja, that is what the course is all about. Puja is a deliberate ritual. It can be a simple puja or it can be elaborate puja. But it is a very deliberate action to invoke the grace of Bhagavan. And in our culture, we find that the whole day is filled with the puja bhavana. When we get up in the morning, we pray before stepping on the ground. Then bathing becomes a puja. It is like abhishekam, to the body, which is the temple in which Parameshwara is seated. So dressing and putting flowers is alankara. eating is a puja, going to work is a puja. Yeah. So, but this kind of deliberate puja that you're going to see in the course is a way to connect with the divine, with the total. See, I'm an individual, and as an individual, my shakti is limited, my knowledge is limited, my power is limited. I cannot, see what's there in the future for me. I don't know my past also before this birth. So, puja is a way to connect with the divine, and in Swamiji's words, by puja, daily pujas, we can Ishwaraize our lives and bring the divine presence to our homes, our minds, and hearts. Yeah? So then the home where pujas are done at least once a day, if not twice a day, morning and evening puja, then it is like invoking all the devatas. They will reside there in the homes. And yatra devaha santi, where the devatas are there, there are the countless blessings of harmony and success and good health. That is why they say if you have a tulsi plant and you're worshipping at the entrance, then the asuras cannot enter your home. Yeah? So that vibration itself is different. You'll find that in your puja room, if you sit, then you will get a lot of answers and insights into your problems or whatever you want to know about. Unlike the other rooms in your home, Why? Because there was a regular mantra chanting and the bhavana was different. There was a puja. Yeah. So this is the greatness of the puja. And it is a very intelligent way to address that unknown elements in our life, yeah, and to live a meaningful, harmonious life on a daily basis. So Puja Swamiji is very fond of pujas, and he would say, if we don't do puja, like, if my friend has a birthday, if I just simply sit at home and say, oh, happy birthday, and think very fondly of my friend, the thoughts will reach him. But if I give it a form, if I call my friend, if I send a gift or buy some flowers or send some sweets, then that emotion, that connection has got a tangible reality. Yeah. So even our mental prayers to Bhagavan, to remove obstacles or to get something, that is more concretized through a puja. And that is what we are going to learn in this course. How to form, what are the steps of the puja? How is a puja done? Why is it done? What is a puja? And how can I, intensify this connection to the divine through the daily pujas? It is an absolute must. And being a Bharatiya, we cannot afford not to do a puja because it is so ingrained in our culture, right? And I'm so happy Satyanarayan ji is an ardent puja fan, if I may call him, He's a puja practitioner, and he was sharing how, he does not miss even one puja. All elaborate pujas are done. And then we can see the benefits, and the purity of mind, the clarity of mind, and the happiness that will come. What else do we want, So that is in short, the relevance of puja. And the main purpose is to invoke that Daivam factor. Yeah. Shadete yatra vartante tatra daiva sahayakrit. Yeah. So giving our prayers and our wishes and sentiments a concrete form in the form of a deliberate action, such as a puja, has immense benefits, and we are very fortunate to be born in this culture, Sanatana Dharma, where in a year, it is said we have 12 months and 13 festivals. So festivals are around the corner, and it is a great opportunity to connect to Bhagavan in any form, be it Devi, Ganesha, Krishna, Shiva, and there are some aspects of the ritual and the puja. Yeah. And ultimately, the puja, as we continue to do it over a period of time, we find that not only is the life and the individual becomes Ishwaraized, But the ultimate purpose is to remove the ahankara and mamakara, that nothing belongs to me. Everything is Ishvara. Yeah. And that Ishvara
Why
is the Ishvara is in
every
charge,
person
is in control.
any god?
Yeah. So with those few words, I will stop now and let Satyanarayan ji start with this course. I wish you all a very enjoyable and auspicious puja course. And Sri Gurubhyo Namaha, Om Tat Sat.
Ma'am, and should we do puja every day, twice or once?
We can wait for the questions at the end, Vedant. Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you, Swami. Thank you, Mataji. Okay, so we'll look at the agenda today. Okay, before we start this topic, some housekeeping instructions. See, what we are using is a trial version of Zoom, which will log out after 40 minutes. Okay, so we started this exercise, this recording at 3:55 p.m. So I'm expecting that the Zoom will log us out after 40 minutes, approximately 4:35 or 4:40 p.m. Right? So in case it happens, it will happen anyway. So you can kindly log in again. Okay, we'll wait for a couple of minutes for the people to join. Again, we'll restart again. So that's the first one. Second is, I would request you all to go on mute, during the course. And in case there are any doubts, note it down on a piece of paper. And we will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of this. At the end of every major blocks, we will have a short Q&A, and at the end of the session, the class will have a much more detailed 15-minute Q&A session where you can reserve the questions, right? But in case there are some things which are not allowing you to move forward in your understanding, or it's absolutely urgent, please, by all means, raise the questions. We'll be happy to answer you, right? So these are the two. So broadly, if you look at, first of all, I'd like to give an overview of the whole course before we get into this specific agenda. The course is divided into two parts. The first part is about fundamentals, right? Basically, in today's session, we will talk about the, little more elaboration in terms of different kinds of prayers, what kind of results with the prayer comes in, why do people do prayer, what is the concept of Devata, and all those, technical terms which are related to puja and prayers. We'll talk about it. The second part of the session, because Sanskrit is an important element, as a part of the, while performing puja, we normally chant Sanskrit slokas, right? So it will be wonderful if you all can understand and know Sanskrit better, so that your puja can be much more powerful, much more accurate, right? For example, many people pronounce mantras which may not be 100% perfect, right? So the idea of this session is not to give an elaborate overview of the elaborate, course of Sanskrit, but just enough for you to go and look at the book and pronounce the mantras properly with proper intonation, proper, pronunciation, and with clarity of speech, right? That is the whole intent. We'll look at some of the aksharas or varnamalas and some basics, very, very basics in terms of, some rules of pronunciation, how to avoid, what are the pitfalls, and, some specific aspects. We'll look at it. In case we do not have time to complete the Sanskrit part today, we will continue that in the next class, right? So at the end of the day, we will have this recap session, Q&A session, and then we close the prayers. Now, subsequently, in class 2, class 3, and class 4, we will look at the detailed 16-step puja and 5-step pujas. Again, those classes are divided into 3 parts. One is we'll talk about the concepts of various steps, mantras involved in it, the meanings behind those mantras, and the concept or tatparyam behind those mantras, and then the actual performance. So we'll divide into 3 parts. One is, you'll have opportunity to perform the puja yourself. We're trying to see, best way to, get people get involved in actual, delivering these pujas, because you see, in next 3-4 weeks time, you're going to have a lot of these festivals coming up. I think sooner we finish, let's say after the third class, which is your 5th of September, sorry, so 29th of August, 30th is Krishna Janmashtami. So you can perform a puja to Lord Krishna on 30th, right? Straight away. Whatever you learn today, you can apply it on 30th. Within a week following that, you have Navaratri pujas coming up, right? So there are quite a few. This is a puja season, and this is the right time where you are all there, talking about this puja. It's very important for us to stay, and we are going to share notes with you. Some of these PowerPoint presentations is self-contained. You don't need a separate notes. As much as possible, we are given details in these slides. So we'll share this with you. Have this as a reference. Apart from this, we'll also share with you in the next few classes the detailed 16-step puja process, a PDF document, which you can take a printout and keep it. We'll share with you both the simple as well as the detailed version, so that whichever is convenient, you can start using it or adopting it on a daily basis, right? The idea is not just talking about this, also practically doing it every day, right? Initially, you will have a little bit of difficulty in terms of following the sequence, but once you get used to it, trust me, 3 to 4 days time, 3 to 4 attempts of puja, the flow will come automatically. You'll automatically do things. Your body language will speak. Your mudras will automatically come in. Your mantras will automatically come in. It's a lot more easier, and it's not at all complex as we all think. And more importantly, especially on Sanskrit language, Sanskrit is a part of our blood. It's a part of our culture, because it's a part of the nature. So the Sanskrit is built within your blood, within your muscles, within your body. So in fact, if I were to say, the most easiest language to learn in the world is Sanskrit, because it's a part of your nature itself, right? So you don't have to fear about Sanskrit. Sanskrit is absolutely simple. If this course helps, trigger that, interest in you to learn Sanskrit further, all the more reason you should go for it, right? This is a great way to, one of the most excellent foundational learnings you will have. Useful for the whole lifetime for a variety of activities. It could be for puja. Tomorrow you might want to get into Vedanta, the more advanced topics, science, more nuanced understanding of certain scientific concepts. For these, all Sanskrit is required. We'll also talk about some of these excellent attributes of Sanskrit in a while, right? So with that, without much of ado, I'll get into the details of the the first topic. We've completed the prayer. Okay. First, why do we pray? Right? The fundamental question which comes to all of your mind is that if I ask you a question, why do you pray God? What are the different kinds of answers people give, right? What people are bound to give. Number one is prayer. When they say prayer, puja is one of the part of the prayer. Prayer could be anything, right? We'll talk about it in detail. But today, this topic is about prayer as a whole, in general, right? It could be, and it has nothing to do with any specific religion. Prayer is common for everybody, every human, right? So why do we pray? Why do we pray God? We pray God or Guru, okay, for a non-demanding love and respect. Because you don't pray because of compulsion. You don't pray because there's a deal. I ask you something, you have to give me something. There's a binding between these two people that there's an agreement. We don't pray for that. We pray unconditionally. We pray non-demanding. It means we have a natural love and respect for God and Guru, and hence that we are praying. And then we are also using the prayer as a way to enhance or increase the closeness towards them, right? So as much as possible, we need to go closer to the Guru and closer to the God, right? So that will help us in our life. So prayer is meant for that. Now, by prayer, it is also easy to establish communication with the God on a constant basis. It means, and as Mataji was talking about it, you need to invoke God's grace. For you to invoke God's grace, you need to communicate with the God. Prayer is the way you can communicate with the God, right? So that's one aspect of prayer. The second aspect of prayer is about people pray because of a reason, because I have undertaken a project, or let's say I want to complete my studies, or something, a task I have undertaken. I want to be successful in that task. I need blessings for that, right? So the deity or the God to whom the prayer is being bestowed upon will bless you with the grace, right? So you do prayer with the purpose of ensure that I want to succeed in a particular task. Plus, the prayer also gives you Atma Shakti. Atma Shakti is what you call self-confidence. Now, somebody might question, by praying, does really the grace come? Does the grace come in the form of light, or can I see the grace physically? No, the very fact that you're having Atma Shakti or confidence being built up once you pray, it gives you, that itself is a blessing or grace you got. I'll give you some example, a small example of a couple of incidences in my life, which I've witnessed, which will give you some view. When I used to study 6th to 10th, I used to study in a school called Ahobilamat Higher Secondary School, where we studied some Sanskrit, and it's a very, very old traditional school. And there used to be a small Vinayaka temple, just a couple of streets behind the school. And when we used to walk from home to the school, we always used to ensure that we would do circumambulate 3 times, one production of Vinayaka, one prayer before entering the school. And this has been our practice for years together, right? We never miss it even for a single day. Once what happened, and it gives us tremendous happiness and confidence. Early morning you go, there's a little bit of prayer, because if you don't do that, you miss something. Once there was an urgent test going on, and we had to rush to the school. So we ignoring Vinayaka, we just rushed into school because we were late to the school, right? You won't believe that day we were not able to score well, because all our heart were, somewhere the confidence was missing. Oh God, I missed praying Vinayaka. So the point I'm trying to say is, moment you pray, the reason why your Atma Shakti develops is because you are surrendering the whole yourself to the God and say that all the problems He will take care of it. I don't have to worry. It is something I don't have to bother. I have given it to the God. He will take care of it. It means you have become more confident. Otherwise, you are worried. You're worried about the outcome. But you're surrendering everything to the God and saying, He will take care of everything. That's where the Atma Shakti comes in picture. So it gives you tremendous boost and peace of mind, right? Normally, people pray because they want to achieve the peace of mind. There are different connotations of peace of mind. When you say peace of mind, people want to have a peaceful happiness. Happiness is different from peace of mind. Happiness or sadness is 2 different extremes, right? The peace of mind is somewhere in between, where you're neither too happy nor too sad, right? And you're always in a blissful mood, right? People say that they want to achieve peace of mind. That's one of the reasons why people pray. And some people pray because they want to remove the mental stress. It could be stress coming out of studies. It could be stress coming out of the day-to-day job at home. Even with the COVID-19 times, you had all of us had to go through a humongous amount of stress at home. Because suddenly our whole schedule got changed. Few things we were depending on the needs we had to do ourselves. Few things, for everything, like for example, day-to-day things, we had to, our work got elongated, right from washing the vegetables to, the hygiene matters. So the stress, it's very stressful, right? So puja gives you advantage of, when you pray, you can remove your stress. You can completely remove your stress from your mind. That gives you mental freedom and mental happiness, and which is directly related to your physical well-being. See, by doing puja, it means your arogyata also increases. So that's one of the reasons. So because mind is related to body, the moment you remove the mental stress, your body automatically becomes all right. Even if you have a headache, or you have a pain, or you have some form of ailments going on in your body, puja gives you relief from all those. And many people also say that, over a period of time, I want to gradually move towards realizing the God, right? Because there is so much of demanding day-to-day life. And I would like to ensure that, when I pray, more and more I pray, I go more closer to God and realize God. So one of the reasons people say, right? So these are the why aspects of praying, right? Now these coming to benefits, right? So what are the benefits you get from praying? Number one is, this is not in an order, but I will go in a different order altogether. Activity wise, when you're praying, there's an attitude part and there is a serving part. Okay, both of them gets enhanced. It means basically, when you the prayer makes an activity with a bhav, spiritual bhav. It means you have a service mentality, you have a giving mentality, you have a mentality that can help you to dedicate yourself. You get into a mentality which you're so much focused that you tend to make less mistakes, right? So when you're praying, it gives you, it enhances your concentration. When you pray, your mind is completely focused on few things. So these are the practices you get when you do prayer, right? And this gets manifested in your other activities as well. So it gives you a lot of benefits in terms of, when you constantly pray with concentration, with the right attitude, not just during the prayer, even outside the prayer, your whole of the activities gets streamlined, right? Because you tend to get a seva attitude or service attitude towards somebody, right? It's very, very important. Second is your prayer also helps you purify your thought, because as you see, as long as you're active, you're living in an active world, in this world, your mind is always a chatterbox. Always something keeps coming up. Thoughts keeps coming. Your disturbance keeps coming. Thoughts keep changing things. Today you will be thinking about a movie today. Tomorrow you think about studies. About your family, about your teacher, about who. The mix of thoughts keeps coming. It's like a rattling noise. It keeps making, right? So then what really happens is that because of this flow of thoughts, disorganized and unoriented orientation of thoughts, you're not able to focus on something or concentrate on something, right? And sometimes very undesirable thoughts also come in, things like the thoughts related to bhaya, fear, anxiety. They are all misuse of energy. It means your body has got some energy and these energies are getting wasted in these different thought processes. Now, prayer helps you preventing those misuse of energy. It means it helps you direct all your energy into something which is more focused, which is more useful, and which will help you develop a frame of mind which consumes less energy as compared to a mind being cluttering with so much of thoughts. So praying helps you reduce your anxiety and increases contemplation. Why is increased? Like if you are in studies, for example, if you are regularly praying, you will find that you are able to concentrate on your studies much, much better as compared to you not doing any prayer. So as students, all of us should pray regularly so that our concentration levels can improve, because by prayer automatically demands concentration, automatically demands surrender, automatically demands that you're doing something with love and devotion. Imagine if you're able to do all this in your studies, you can be the topper in your class, right? So that on a thought level, at an attitude level, right? Few things are apparent when you're in your day-to-day life. There are few things which are very trivial, very apparent, mundane. All of us know about it. But if you want to have a deeper contemplation of the reality of the world, why this universe is formed, why who is God, and if you want to go for more advanced or more involved awareness of the whole universe, the prayer really helps you. So that attitude changes completely, right? So you tend to become more introverted from being an extrovert. Okay, in the modern days, Western philosophy tells you be extrovert, mix with people, talk to people, be in party, network with people. But our Indian philosophy says be introverted, in a sense that always focus on the Atma or God within your heart, right? And then it automatically expands itself automatically, right? So reaching out to the world is not from looking at outside, looking inside. So the prayer helps you become more introverted, right? So it also creates an awareness that it is a God who's actually doing everything. I am just an instrument in delivering whatever I'm designed to do. I've been made as I'm a student. My job is to study, and then I'm an instrument. This body is just an instrument in delivering, but the task which has been assigned to me. But the real person who's doing the things is God, right? It gives you that attitude. And more importantly, the last not the least is it helps you reduce the ego, right? The biggest problem in human today is about your ego, about your position, power, money. So when you habituate yourself surrendering to somebody, your man surrenders to God, all powerful God, through medium prayer, automatically the humility sets in. You become more humble. Your ego crashes because all is God is all supreme, all powerful, right? With that attitude, if you're able to serve him, right, the very fact of serving itself, will give you what are we doing in puja? In puja, we actually invoke a God as if we give a very royal treatment for a God. God is coming to our house, and we invite him. We put him on simhasan. We give something. We do arati. We do naivedya. We are serving him basically. So when you have the serving mentality, automatically ego comes down drastically. When the ego comes down drastically, as a student, what are the benefits of ego? Not having ego, you will not be jealous. You will not be proud. You will have more friends, because the moment you have less ego, you will see a lot of new friends get attracted to you, and you will have less of competition. Because if you don't have ego, what the advantage is that you're so nice, so easy to deal with, so easy to move with. Everybody comes to you automatically. So this prayer helps you achieve that. So good key summaries. It helps you, at your thought level, at your attitude level, at the activity level, on day-to-day, you're able to do things better. And at a ego level, you're able to, at a character level, it helps you shape up your career, shape up your character. Right. Now, we will give you some basic concepts of prayer, right? Okay, it's about to be 4:45. I'm expecting anytime this Zoom meeting might close, but anyway, keep watch. In case it gets disconnected, please do log in, right? There are 3 different types of prayers, okay? So broadly, we can categorize this as a mental, oral, and physical. What is mental prayer? Suppose if I sit quiet in a chair or a squat on a squat down in front of my God, think about him. It's a mental prayer. You're meditating or doing japa without pronouncing the words orally or doing any physical activity like offering flowers or naivedya or harati. You're mentally doing it. That's mental prayer. Second is the oral prayer called vachika. It means thinks about, we started this class with slokas. It's an oral prayer, right? Or it could be in terms of kirtans. You sing a song in a bhajan or Vedic hymns, in a more advanced form. Suktas, Rudram, Chamakam, Purusha Sri Suktam, Narayana Suktam. Those suktas are vachika type of pujas. The third type of puja is physical puja called kayika. It means you are actually doing a ritual, and the ritual involves materials, not just you. It involves several materials. It involves action on those materials, and ritual involves a deity statue or a figurine. You need that for doing this. So it could be a homa, maybe a big elaborate homa kunda, right? So whatever the important thing to note here is it is not just 3 categories. Most important to know is you can have a mental prayer, mental attitude. Your oral vachika type of prayers also involves mental. It means you need to be mentally focused and also do oral japas. And similarly, when you do physical kayika type of puja, it subsumes the other 2 as well. So the physical puja also involves a little bit of chanting of mantras, also attitude or thinking about God in your mind. So I would say these 3 are 3 different steps, right? And physical is involved both mental and oral as well. So they are not distinct from each other. Right? This is just the categorization is just to show you that there are different ways you can pray God. Right now, what is the effect of puja? Right. we say there are two different phalas or results, drashta phala and adrishta phala. Drashta phala means something tangible, something you're able to see, you're able to experience. For example, Swamini was talking about visa god, right? Visa Vinaya Venkatesha. So when you go pray to the god, you get the visa, US visa, right? So it's a tangible benefit. Let's say you go and pray to the god that I want to score centum in my mathematics, right? You pray God, and you see that that's happening. It means your prayer has been addressed. You will achieve centum. So that's something tangible. But you should know that if you don't achieve the results as you thought, you should assume that there's a larger plan which is beyond your intelligence. It means not having a tangible result does not mean the absence of a grace, right? There is a reason for something to happen. It has happened to you, and you prayed, and then sometimes the results may be tangible, or results may be unseen or adrishta phala, which will be seen later, right? And this is also called punya. Okay, which punya is a set of good deeds, the effect of good deeds which accrues over a period of time, over multiple janmas, in fact, right? For the prayer. The results of those punyas may manifest in this life itself or in the next few janmas. Let's say, for example, you do a lot of these pujas, a lot of these prayers. If you're not able to achieve anything this janma, in the following birth, you will be born to a great family, pious family. You will have a great upbringing. You will be, you will be rich. You'll have enough money to donate to people. So all this will happen. You'll have all the things what you wanted this janma will continue. You will continue to achieve that next janma. It means your prayers will never go waste, right? That's the whole idea. Idea is either it be drashta phala or adrishta phala. Prayer is always powerful. If not today, it will give a result tomorrow, day after tomorrow, next year, in this life, or next janma. So the effect always continues, right? Because it's a punya. This gives you punya. The punya has to have a positive effect, right? And more important to know is that it is not about the tangible benefit or outcome. It is also about the removal of obstacle. For example, let's say, I will give you some example. One of my friend was traveling in a car, right? And then he met with an accident, right? And incidentally, and this was early morning, 5:36, he was traveling in a highway, right? And he has got a habit of getting up in the morning and doing Sandhya Vandanam. Of course, when you are traveling in a car, you can't do Sandhya Vandanam. So he sat was doing Gayatri Japa, right? And all of other couple of other friends were chatting and they were doing it. This person was closing his eyes and we were doing Gayatri Japa. Now, car met with an accident with a lorry, with a truck. All the three people were thrown out, right? The other two people got hurt. But this person came out without a single scratch in his body. Exactly the same accident. Now you might associate this with, I was doing Gayatri Japa and then Mata Gayatri helped me, get the, not to get, so she protects you. So it could be a protection from the evil. It could be a protection from something which is bad, which is supposed to happen. So it is not just the outcome of something, right? It is not about succeeding in something. It is about reducing the impact of a bad thing is also a result, right? I just want to highlight these two are the important concepts when you talking about prayers, right? Now, but all of us, but very important thing for us to know is that prayer alone cannot solve your problem, right? For you to do anything, there are three things that are required. One is your efforts, right? For example, let's say you want to study and you want to achieve, you want to be a class topper, you want to join IIT, or you want to get a medical seat, whatever your aims are, for example, right? Or I want to get a good job, you first need to have a prayatna or efforts, right? No amount of puja or prayer will help you unless you have your own prayatna or efforts. Okay, so nothing in the world can be accomplished without efforts. Efforts are very, very important, right? The amount of efforts, the intensity of efforts, both, right? can vary based on what you want to achieve, right? If you want to achieve something really big, right? So let's say, for example, you want to become Bill Gates or Apple, Steve Jobs. It requires years of practice, years of planning, years of running a business. Or you want to achieve, you want to become a big saint, right? You need to have years of practice of studying, doing puja, purifying yourself, studying Vedanta, Sanskrit, and years of practice of teaching and being a part of satsang, and then you become mature. So everything requires a lot of efforts, right? And these efforts are never controlled because efforts are based on a willpower. It's your willpower which really matters, right? Because you can put in efforts, or you can skip the efforts, right? So the efforts are important. Then the time, or what you call kala. Once the effort is made, right, it needs time for the results to fructify. It means if you sow a seed today, it will become a tree only after 10 years time. You have to wait, right? It cannot happen like, I'm putting efforts instantly within next minute I want to get the results. It cannot happen that way, right? So various things takes various amounts of time. So you've got to be a little patient, right? And then the amount of time it takes also depends on what kind of efforts you put. What are the end objective you want to achieve, right? Time to some extent is in our control because let's say, that, for example, if I study for 6 months time a particular course, I'm going to achieve this grade, I'm going to pass out. If, let's say, next 4 Sundays, if I'm going to sit and concentrate and on these classes, I will get some knowledge about doing puja. So those few things but there are a few things which are not in your control. Certain things take time because there are so many variables in the world, in the universe. You can't understand everything, why things happen the way it happens, right? So if you look at efforts, 100% your control. Time, some extent to control, but to large extent, it is not in your control. It has to get the results. Only God knows when will the result come in. Beyond these two, efforts and time, you also need the third thing called grace, Daivam. The whole purpose of prayers is to invoke Daivam. Even if you put efforts and you have enough time, if you don't have a grace, you cannot achieve anything, right? Sometimes, even with minimum efforts, with a quick time, if you have lots of grace, right, you can achieve things. Right? Of course, efforts are required, right? The idea is, the third is non-negotiable. It means you need to have, whatever happens because of the grace of the God. It's not happening because of you. It's happening because of the grace of God. So it's very important that when we put efforts, we have this attitude in mind that there is an element of uncertainty. There is an element of, because it may result, but whatever I get as a result is a blessing from or a grace from God, right? So if you have this attitude, you will always succeed, right? This is important. So the idea of this puja and prayer is about invoking the grace of the Lord or God or Guru, right? Now, having said that, so the question is, now whom should I pray to? Everybody, all of you have whatever appeals to you. For example, for some people, it's Krishna. For some people, it's Rama. For some people, it's Hanuman or Vinayaka or Gayatri. Whichever God appeals you, you can pray. For some people, your Guru. If Guru really appeals you can pray your Guru. So the question is, and that's called Ishta Devata. Ishta Devata is a concept is like whichever which God is appealing to you, and this can change also over the period of time, right? Second is about, you also have the concept of Kula Devata at home, because several paramparas, people have prayed some temple, some god in some form, and every family has got some Kula Devata. Sometimes you also have something called Grama Devata. In your village or a town, there'll be one deity, which you all, as a complete, the society prays. Or if you're living in an apartment, you may have a small temple within your apartment, right? All of you can participate in puja. So that could be a favorite god. In Advaita, Swami, Acharya Shankaracharya has involved, as codified 5 different types of worship, right? And a worship towards Ganapati, which is Vinayaka, Shiva, Shakti, Vishnu, and Aditya. Aditya, sun god, right? So any of these gods could be your Ishtadevata, right? There's no restriction. As long as attitude is right, as long as your heart feels for the god, you can go ahead and pray for it, right? Now, I would like to take a pause here. Okay. Maybe I will complete this part and then take a pause. So what is the summary? Puja is a physical or kayika form of prayer, right? It's a ceremonial worship ranging from a brief daily rites at home, simple puja, to elaborate temple rituals, right? Usually in a puja, you will have a deity, on an altar. You manifest the deity in an image or a statue, and then you accord honor to him as a royal guest. As if you should imagine somebody is like a royal guest coming to your house. How would you treat him? Right from washing his feet, making him sit, give him water, give him food, give him whatever he likes, singing, dancing, harati, whatever, offering flowers, whatever you do for a royal guest. You should imagine God like a royal guest, right? And that's what usually is done in puja. And then the components of puja can vary according to your sect, community, which part of country you belong to, which time of the day, or your needs, of specific needs, and some of the texts you follow, right? Advaita, Vishishaita, or if you're, like for example, in North India, people talk about Dattatreya, which is not that popular in South, right? So it varies. But idea is Ishta Devata, right? I mean, as long as any Devata is closer to you, as long as any Devata is, you're feeling close to the heart, you can start following that. There are two different two popular procedures that we usually follow. Either it's a 16-step puja or a 5-step puja. We will talk about these in the subsequent classes. Next 3-4 classes, we'll talk about it, right? So this kind of completes the overview of puja. Before I move to the next part, I would like to take questions. Or if there are any questions, you can ask now. Or if you want to wait till the end of the session, we can do that as well. Does anybody has a pressing question at this point in time?
No.
Okay. If there's no question, there are no questions, then we'll move on. Right. Now, as I said, I just want to shift the gears and move into a very important topic called Sanskrit. Right. So what did we see? We saw what are the concept of a prayer, why should we pray, what are the benefits of a prayer, pujas, the basic fundamentals of the technical terminologies of pujas, your puja with mind, manasa puja, or oral vachika puja, or kayika puja, and then what does it involve? A typical puja involves, right? But underlying all this, right, especially when you're doing puja, you have to chant a lot of slokas. That requires you to know Sanskrit. You should know how to read Sanskrit. The idea of this session, and maybe we'll also follow up with some part in the next class, is to give you some fundamentals about Sanskrit, right? Before I start that, you should understand a few things about Sanskrit, right? Number one, Sanskrit is a Deva Bhasha and timeless, immortal. It has formed as the world was formed. The first Akshara was Om. When the earth came out of the sun, Bija, from the sun, it came, what do you call the primordial sound. The Sanskrit started there. So Sanskrit is a universal language, and it is a Deva Bhasha. It means all, it's one of the most purest form of language or communication media you can ever find, right? It's timeless, right? And it's a mother of all languages. And you'll find that in every of your language, be it Tamil or Telugu or Kannada or Hindi, you will have some Sanskrit root words, right? It's all part of the usual, day-to-day things what you use. You'll find around 60 to 70% has an origin towards Sanskrit. So it's a mother of all languages. And beauty is that this is the simplest of all the languages. Unlike there's a popular notion that Sanskrit is complex, meant only for pujaris, meant only for people who are more educated. No, that's not the case. Sanskrit is the simplest. If at all any language you can master easily, it is Sanskrit, right? Because it is unambiguous. In English, what you do, PUT put, BUT but. There's a confusion. Same U is pronounced in two different ways. In Sanskrit, there is no such confusion. What you write is what you speak, is what you think, right? So there is no unambiguous nature at all. It's so easy to learn. Easily you can really relate it to it, right? And more importantly, and this has been declared by NASA in 1980. There was a research done, right? The most unambiguous of all human speech and best suited for computer processing and artificial intelligence. The latest inventions in computers, latest in artificial intelligence, they're all, Sanskrit is a base for all of those, right? So it means, because I know few people in research who are using Sanskrit as a medium for translation. For example, let's say, I want to translate from a German language to a Spanish language. There, you need to have an intermediary language, a common set of language which can become an intermediary for translating, right? So Sanskrit becomes an intermediary because Sanskrit is all pervasive and it's all inclusive. All the complex forms, all the expressions of all the languages in the world can be expressed in Sanskrit. There's no single expression or word which cannot be expressed, it cannot be told in Sanskrit, right? So because of that, it is such a complete language. It has become a medium of translation for every other language, right? So it's a very evidence. You can read this article, very interesting article. It talks about in the NASA talks about, right? And also it is said that the Sanskrit language arises from the very root of the sounds or vibrations of the universe. So it's a part of your nature. So when you say it's a part of your nature, it means that it's built within you. It's a part of your blood. It's part of your muscle. It's a part of your brain. So you don't have to make any special efforts learning Sanskrit. Right? It's there with you, right? More importantly, Sanskrit words are not randomly chosen, right? Every word in Sanskrit, every letter in Sanskrit has a deep scientific concept, right? It's a reflection of an inherent sound of that object, concept, or a phenomena, right? When, like, for example, maybe I'll give you some examples subsequently. In English, you say something as pen, right? In Sanskrit, you say kalam. Okay, so there's a a is mata, a is cow, right? I'm just giving some examples, right? So the question now is, everything has got a deep-rooted meaning. Everything has got a concept. So even a single letter has got a meaning. It has not been randomly chosen. So there's a very science behind it. Okay, because of the scientific nature of the method of pronunciation of Sanskrit, every part of your mouth is exercised while speaking, which is unlike English. In English, it is considered to be a style to talk without opening your mouth too much, right? Because like people who speak good English, they don't open the mouth too much. Unlike in Sanskrit, you got to exercise right from your throat to your chest to so it means it gives you tremendous amount of exercise to your whole system, right? And the Sanskrit syllables are also associated with various chakras in your body. So if you do the right pronunciation, especially mantras, it invokes a lot of these chakras, which will help you in your physical well-being as well, right? So the advantage of is that because of the fact that you're exercising your whole mouth, whole organs, if you learn Sanskrit, you can learn every other language easily, right? Because Sanskrit is a superset of everything, right? And proud to say that Sanskrit is the only phonetically perfect language in the world. It means you speak, you write what you speak, unlike other languages. In every other language, there are some discrepancies. In Sanskrit, zero discrepancies. It's phonetically perfect language, right? So this is the beauty of Sanskrit, and we'll get down to the specifics of this language, right? Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go around the table, right? Maybe all of you can take turns. And how many of you know Sanskrit? You know, can you raise your hand? How many of you know these aksharas or the Sanskrit letters? Can you all raise your hands? All
They are just like Hindi letters.
Yeah, they look like just like Hindi.
they look
All
like
these letters, they just look like Hindi.
okay. Hindi is the mother of the Hindi Sanskrit, right? It comes from Devanagari, right? Yeah. So all of you know Hindi well.
Yes,
How many of you? Okay. So any volunteers here? Any volunteers here who can actually pronounce these words?
I can pronounce, sir.
I can also, sir.
You can pronounce. Okay. Fantastic. Okay. So I'm going to give opportunity for who raised the hands. Vedant, would you want to try first? So broadly, before you pronounce, right? I'm going to give you some broad view. There are 10 swaras. There are swaras and there are vyanjanas. Swara means, what do you mean by swara? It means things which come without your effort. Without your swa means without efforts. Natural sound is called vowels, right? Vyanjana is a little bit of efforts on a particular organ of your body, organ of your mouth or your system. A sound is produced. That's your vyanjana, right? There are,
Hindi, they call it Vyanjan. No?
yeah, correct. Okay, so
And in Sanskrit, it is called as Vyanjani.
Sanskrit is called as?
In Sanskrit, Vyanjan is called as Vyanjani.
Vyanjanani.
Vyanjanani.
Okay, it means multiple consonants. Okay, now I'm going to go around the table. So Vedant, would you want to start with this vowels, swaraha?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir.
So start, and okay, while Vedant is saying this, right, I want you all to observe your throat. Okay, when you can say in your without you can mute your microphone. You can say this, but while you do that, observe where is the sound originating. Okay, I just want you to do this small exercise. Okay, so Vyanjan, start. Sorry, Vedant, can you start and other people can repeat?
We are putting more stress on it than Hindi. More stress than Hindi. We are putting more stress on it than Hindi.
I'm not able to hear you, Vedant. Can you repeat yourself, please?
We put more stress on it.
More stress on it. Okay. All right. Okay. Great. Good job. Okay. Good job, Vedant. So I'll give you some basics of it, right? First of all, the swaras. Right? If you have observed the swaras, right? Where does it originate from? If you look at E. Okay, let's not focus on the right hand side, the left hand side column, right? E, U, R. Where does it focus from? So can you the first five syllables? Where does it come from? Comes from throat. Right? From throat. E comes from just 2 inches above the throat, just in the beginning of your tongue. U comes in where? With your, where is the origin? Yeah.
In the upper then.
Yeah.
2
And then
inches above the
Yeah, and there's a lot of confusion.
To tell you.
Yeah, and there's a confusion on this next two syllables. R, r. What is the difference? When you say r, you have to touch your tip of the tongue on the upper part of your upper phalange, upper part of the inside the mouth. In r, you should touch your tip of the tongue on the teeth. Try that. There's a big difference because a lot of people confuse this too. Right? Try that. A, E, U, R, R. Getting it? Similarly, and this is called Hrashva Swara. It means these are all swaras which are, you're not aspiring it, you're not breathing, you're not emphasizing. But if you elongate it a little more, it's called Dirgha Swaras. A, E, E, U, U, R, 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 R. Okay. Then how is the A pronounced? I, A, how they pronounce? If you between the throat and the tongue and the lips, the area in between, if you see the emphasis, that is where all the other syllables are pronounced. A, O, Au. Then last two syllables, Aha. Okay, is called Anuswara. Visarga, Aha is called Visarga. In mantras, you'll find two dots. Ha. You should say that. Right? So I'm going to stop here at this point because already 5:15. We're going to wind up at 5:26 or something. So we will just stop the class today here and then take questions from whatever we studied so far.
I have a doubt. What does this swara after ra mean? It's like the letter in Hindi, la.
Yeah. So this is not very. This is available only in Sanskrit. In Hindi, it's not usually right. So
what's this letter called?
R. So you should touch your tongue near on the teeth inside. Yeah. R is the tongue is touched. The tip of the tongue should touch the top, the roof, right? Whereas in R, it should touch your teeth. That's a big difference. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions on puja? Let's start with puja.
I have a question. What is Sandhya Vandana?
What is Sandhya Vandana? Wonderful question.
Yeah.
What is Sandhya Vandana? Sandhya Vandana can be divided into two words. Sandhya Vandana. Correct? What is Sandhya? What do you mean by Sandhya?
Evening. Evening.
No. Sandhya means the joining of two different time periods. Morning, midnight to morning is also called Sandhya. It's called Pratah Sandhya. When the day to night transition happens in the evening 6 o'clock, it's called Sayam Sandhya. Similarly, exactly at the noon, it's called Madhyanika Sandhya. Right? It is believed that when you do prayer these three times, Pratah Sandhya, Madhyanika Sandhya, and Sayam Sandhya, you get special invoking of grace from the God. Your grace level increases. So it is usually our practice in our culture to pray God in all these three sandhyas. Right? Usually you pray at 6 o'clock in the morning, evening 6 o'clock, in afternoon 12 o'clock. Okay? The concept of this prayer, morning, afternoon, and at a prescribed time, using some specific methods, procedures given, is called Sandhya Vandanam. Any other questions?
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Sir, Adrishtapala is also visible like Drishtapala later.
1 second. Let me come here. Which slide? So your question is about Adrishtapalam.
Is it also visible like Drishtapala?
No,
Later.
Adrishtapalam is not visible. Unseen. It's unseen result. You cannot physically see that, but it happens to you. For example, your
So
punya,
only Drishtapala is visible, right?
only Drishtapala is visible. Yes, you're right. Correct. Can you give me an example of a Drishtapala?
More marks than you deserve.
Come again, sorry. Can you repeat?
More marks than you deserve.
I'm not too sure if I got it right. Can you repeat little
For
slowly?
example, you want to succeed in something, but you can that you
Nand, I'm not able to hear. I'm not able to hear you
try
properly.
it, you can get succeeded it. When you get succeeded, you feel happy. That is called Drishtapala.
So if you succeed in your prayer, in seeing some results, it's a Drishtapala. Correct. You're right. Absolutely correct. Can you give an
I can
example?
also give an example.
Yeah, give an
I can
example.
also.
Yeah, give an example, please.
It's like if we are confident that if we do an exam, for example, and then we are sure that we would score 100% because during the exam if we don't have any doubt in the questions, we are sure that we would we would score lots of marks, and if we studied well also we'll score a lot of marks.
That is only the effort part, Aditya. It's only a prayatna part you're talking about. What about the grace part? When you say Drishtapala, it means you are praying to God that you should score centum or maximum marks. And after praying and after putting efforts, you are able to see the results. That is called Drishtapala. Just by putting efforts, there is no guarantee that you will get the result.
Yes, sometimes we may all fail, but we should not maybe we should not be down by them. We should not feel down that we have failed. We
Correct.
should always go on and do good things and do prayers.
Good. Wonderful. Any other doubts on the pujas and other concepts?
No. But I have a doubt on the 5 chief deities in Advaita. What's Shakti? Is Shakti Shiva or some other god?
Shakti is Parvati or female form of deity. Even Lakshmi, some people say Shakti.
Oh, okay. Can Durga also be called as Shakti?
Yeah, Durga also comes under Shakti. You're right. So you can generally categorize all the feminine deities under Shakti. So if you don't ask question, I'm going to ask you questions, each of you, right? So I'm going to ask.
Excuse me, Satya.
Yeah.
So should we pray only between during, I mean, I know you told that when we pray during 6, 12 and again in the evening 6, the output or there is maximum benefit. So what if you pray at 11 or,
No, this is pertaining to Sandhya Vandanam. This is pertaining to Sandhya
This is
Vandanam.
okay.
There's a specific ritual called Sandhya Vandanam we do at particular time.
Okay.
But normal puja you can do anytime.
Okay.
Normal
So-
puja you can do in the mornings and evenings.
Anytime, because usually they say, after 1 no aarti, or see, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon you don't offer, do you
No,
offer
usually in the mornings or evenings.
evenings,
Regular
right?
puja
Yeah.
in the mornings or evenings.
Sir,
But
I
in
have-
Tirupati, in Tirupati, there is Vasantotsavam at 1:30 and 2 p.m. and all, right? The Kalyan, after Kalyanam, there are different pujas, right? So at 2:30 also, in Tirupati, they are the ritualistic, their puja, they're doing Abhishek at 2:30 p.m. also, like the Vasantotsavam and
So
that.
they call Uchikala Puja. Uchikala Puja, they say in the
Yeah.
afternoon. So the Agama Shastra is very different. Agama Shastra, what they do in temples, they've been prescribed to do, almost like constantly, the puja keeps happening every time. I'm talking about home, the puja, what we do at home. Usually we do in the mornings or evenings, right? We don't generally do in afternoons.
Yeah,
So,
we don't generally do in the afternoon. So that's what I was like always having this query. When at Tirupati, when they're doing puja, why not do the same
There's
thing?
nothing
at
stopping
home?
us. There's nothing stopping us from doing puja in the afternoon. The question now is, you should not, between morning and evening and afternoon, you cannot choose afternoon as a priority. I mean, as much as
Okay,
possible, finish. That's
Finish off
it
before.
doesn't stop us from doing puja. Like, for example, during festival days, you've got to have all the prasad and everything ready, right? Before doing puja. You can't do it 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Right? You need to have modak
You're
ready,
right.
you need to have all this coming ready. By the time it is ready, somebody finishes cooking, it will be 11:30, 12, So you normally have to do puja at 12 o'clock only. So the point is, primarily, and also when do you start the puja is also important, right? Some pujas are so elaborate that can go for 3-4 hours. Maybe you start in the morning, it can go till afternoon. Right? So the beginning, usually you
Puja
start
like
in the
that.
mornings.
It's like, is the Krishna Janmashtami puja, is it 3 hours or 4 hours?
Yeah, it
Actually,
depends on how much elaborate you're doing. It can go for 2 hours, 3 hours also.
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yes.
Only boys do Sandhya Vandana or girls can also do?
No, Sandhya Vandanam is common for everybody. There are some few things prescribed for people who are having holy thread, which are boys usually have a holy thread, right? And there are also other things. So, for example, girls can do Aditya Hridayam. You can chant slokas. There are some prayers available for girls also. So Sandhya Vandanam need not be restricted only to boys. You can also do prayer for the girls also. So it's also very equally powerful.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Are there any other questions? Okay. If there are 2 other questions, then what we will do is we'll complete this session with a small prayer. Okay. So let me chant, and then you can repeat after me. Om Purnamada
Om Purnamada
Purnamidam
Purnamidam
Purnat
Purnat
Purnamudachyate
Purnamudachyate
Purnasya
Purnasya
Purnamadaya
Purnamadaya
Purnamevavashishyate.
Purnamevavashishyate.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Okay. Thank you. We'll end the class.